Yeah, me too.
I see a question popping up in chat. Fearless, what game engine is being used? It's Unity. It's a slightly older version of Unity just because I fear updating engines mid-development. But it's Unity. And it's actually my first Unity game, which sounds dangerous, but if you consider the game development started 5 years ago, it's now almost as deep in my veins as Flash was when I did Neo Scavenger.
It was dangerous in those first couple years of development, but nobody was watching.
That's true. I did that under cover of darkness.
So are we live now on the store page then, it seems like? If we're getting some
Yeah,
chats.
we are. I was just about to tell you. So we're there. We've made
Yay!
it.
Wonderful. All right, so to those who are watching, today we're going to be doing a stream of Ostranauts, which is a forthcoming game from Blue Bottle Games, which is in early access right now. It's a spiritual successor, I suppose, to Neo Scavenger, which is another Blue Bottle game. Not exactly a sequel, but in the same universe. And on
Sidequel.
A sidequel. On stream, we also have Dan, whose voice you just heard, who is the lead dev and founder of Blue Bottle Games.
Hey, folks.
And also we have our wonderful social media manager, Charis, on stream.
Hello. I'm just putting up social posts.
Wow, working while streaming. Incredible. And we might have our programmer, Chris, hailing from just outside of Auckland, I think, in New Zealand, but I'm not sure. Chris can pop on when...
Hey everyone, I'm having a few technical issues here, but yeah, trying to get on the stream, and happy to be here and say hi, and yeah, let's get this going.
Awesome. So we're in 4 different time zones here, and as I always say in chat, we really do live on a planet.
That's the thing. It's like, to anybody else, it's sort of like just a simple stream, but we are in 4 different time zones.
Each representing a different space elevator anchor. So.
I want the one in Lagos. I wanna alt tab to make sure we're recording, and if it crashes stream, I apologize, everybody. Here we go. We are recording. Are we still good to go?
We'll tell you in 5 seconds.
All right. So great. So for the stream today, we're going to be on for about an hour, and we are talking about what would be fun and interesting for everyone. We just had a big patch that introduced a lot of new cosmetic content, as well as mechanical content for the ship designs, which makes the exploration of the derelicts a lot more varied and interesting, and also the building a lot more customizable and stuff. So given that the game sort of started in the many ways, Dan, you can profess to this about wanting to be able to build a ship yourself. We're going to be building a ship today, which is here in the ship editor. The ship editor is not necessarily in the core loop of the game. The game itself, you're going around restoring ships that are in the junkyard of space that we call the boneyard. But these ships that we make in the ship editor actually do or can make it into the game itself. So once they pass through a patch and through, I guess, Dan's approval. And so this one will be doing that. So as we work on this ship, we will be hopefully getting feedback from you guys in the community to talk about what kind of ship we want to make, connecting it to the lore of the game. And then by the time we finish the ship, it will actually be in the game, and you guys can go out there and maybe try to find it after it's been completely degenerated by the loot table and everything's been stolen from it, which is what happens. So yeah, I'm going to go into the ship editor here. Also, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Corey Waite Arnold, and I'm one of the writers, one of the few writers running around for Astronauts. Cool. Dan, do you want to talk about, do you have any future plans on the player side for how this ship editor is going to integrate? Or are you just...
good question.
starting off with one that you don't know yet?
Well, I think I mentioned to you before that the ship editor in some ways was where the game started, because I just wanted to build spaceships out of these atomic pieces that had meaningful roles to play. So not just walls and floors, but I wanted, the air pumps and the scrubbers and the batteries and power generation, all of the different components you can imagine, and kind of like build it and watch it go. And a lot of that actually stemmed from, I guess, realizing while playing Prison Architect, I enjoyed building the prisons almost more than playing the game. I just wanted to plan it out and anticipate where people would live and where they'd walk and what are the security issues with these pathways. So I ended up prototyping a lot of the shipbuilding stuff first. But I think after building a few ships, I realized I wanted to do things with those ships, which is where the real game, the Astronauts game, comes in. You inhabit the ship, and your crew is doing work on the ship, but also trying to survive and get along with each other. And I think around the time I decided I wanted to make a game like this, I was also really into like a lot of the sci-fi spaceship serials like Firefly and Cowboy Bebop, and I think I liked the way that the ensemble characters just kind of riffed against each other from episode to episode. So I wanted to kind of recreate that as well. But how am I going to merge the two? I don't know.
We will.
I kind of pictured like last ditch effort way into the game. Like if you could commission a ship, you have so much money that you could commission somebody to build a ship for you, and then you just use the editor to design it, and then come back in 6 months and they built it.
Yeah, like you
but
make it
I
out
think there are probably
to the Titan
Go
ship. You like make it out to the Titan shipyard, all the way out there on one of the moons, and then you kind of commission, one of the builders. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think like I've had people talking about like, well, can you build an asteroid base or things like that? And I guess technically you could do all of these things. Technically, it's just a matter of like having the right pieces available, and but
that's one of the cool things about indie game dev as well, is that when the users are starting asking for features like, can I build an asteroid base, like we get to think about it, and maybe we could add that in. So
why not?
It's great to have this collaborative back and forth with the actual players and be able to change the path of the game that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what you guys see here, you're probably familiar with if you've played some of the early access of Astronauts, which is the salvage pod you start out in the game. You can pull some of the ships from the game into the editor here, so you can get a sense. So when you first start Astronauts, you have been you're just a humble shipbreaker or some other low-level job, and you start the game and you've really working really hard to just scrap up barely enough money to get a salvage pod, and if you're lucky, it looks as good as this. There's one that's not even...
What a luxurious pod.
One that's not even as good as this, which is hard to play with. But this one actually has all the basic systems you need to live, and just to give a brief background, since I'm the writer and I'm now reading a lot of lore about this game, this is sometime... it's concurrent with Neo Scavenger, but it's sometime in the future, about 2079, after Earth has suffered a pretty catastrophic near-orbit event called an ablation cascade, which we can talk about a little bit later. But the basic gist of it is that Earth is cut off from the rest of the system, which has been developing sort of on its own, both before and after the ablation cascade. So there's, civilization on Luna, which is Earth's moon. There's civilization on Mars and the moons of Jupiter and such. And you, when you start the game, are working on as a shipbuilder for a Nigerian corporation on an asteroid, and their job is to break ships. And all around the ship breaking industry, they have a junkyard, which is called the Boneyard. And so when you start the game, you've bought one of these pods, and you're deciding, I'm going to make a go of it myself. I'm going to fly one of these pods out and find a derelict and kind of fix it up. So this is a very simple ship that has everything you would need to do that. It has a battery here, which runs into... I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, so I'm going to do some zooming.
Hey, Corey, can I just jump on for a sec? Just wanted to point out, in case for people joining the stream not quite sure what they're seeing right here. So what we're looking at here, this isn't actually part of the main player experience. So when you play in the game, it generally won't look like this. There's a lot of placeholder content in here and stuff. And the reason for that is this is one of the special developer tools that we use when we're making the game. So this is more just for us, for how we put ships together. And again, because it's an indie game, once you've played through the main game content, you can actually access this as well as a player. But for most players, they won't be going this deep into the nuts and bolts and having all the placeholder content there.
Oh, right, and that won't even be on
I think
our
it's also
ship once
worth
we
pointing
get
out.
there. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the things that you're doing in here do at least partially translate into the game in terms of like if you were going to build the ship piece by piece while playing the game, you would want to know how to hook things up.
Yep.
So you could learn a few things by watching this, but yeah, like this is pretty bare bones dev tool stuff, which any player has access to through the ship editor button on the main menu.
Yeah. So when you'll start the game, you'll be able to see and interact with this ship and uninstall this battery here if you'd like, uninstall this tank if you'd like, or this heater. And in fact, early in the game, you're installing a battery. But essentially, the basic tools of a ship are all here, which is a battery running into these conduits that go all around the ship that power it, a nav station over here so you can fly the ship, an RCS engine right here, which we'll talk about once we start building, which goes out to these thrusters, which are here and here, and heating and environmental systems. So that's the basic pod, but what we're going to be doing is building from scratch. So we're going to create a new ship here, and I guess we can name it. This will be the community ship. Let's just do that for now. And we won't. Should we select one of these to start, Dan, or just go?
I'm watching the Steam stream, so I'm watching your cursor 5 seconds ago, but are you up in like the metadata for the ship?
Yeah, I was going to create a new ship here.
The metadata stuff, like the name, the model name, the year, and the designation, those might be some good things for the community to throw up in chat. Not throw up. I don't want to say you're vomiting. Toss up.
What's that speakeasy ship? What's that one about?
I can pull this one up really briefly.
You guys added a speakeasy?
I indeed made, for the game, which you can now find out in space, created a big giant pleasure yacht for some of the wealthier people in the Astronauts universe that has one side of it is like a hotel over here, and the other side of it is for the crew.
Is the speakeasy ship your file name for like a
That's cool.
like a backup copy of it, or?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to build our own ship here, though, from scratch. So this editor, you are searching for the pieces you need and just kind of building them out almost like Lego, essentially. So part of having the community here is we want to talk about what kind of ship we want to make. I'm going to start with just mapping out some basic floors, but communicating with chat here, we can talk about what we want to build. So I'll maybe start us off. It's easy to be directed by the sort of history and lore of the game. So maybe if there are people in the chat, or even just us Astronauts devs can talk about it. Some of the ideas I had were possibly just a standard freighter we could make, just like a trucker in space, alien style, and the job of this ship would be to haul cargo from place to place. Or we could make a research vessel, maybe like a big science and research vessel for going on planet side and picking stuff up, doing research. We could make a racer, a really tiny RCS racer.
Oh my god, there's so many options. Also, if people have names for a ship, that could maybe be a jumping off point.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah,
That'd
what's
be
a good
cool.
name? And if you want to relay chat to me, I'm not seeing it, so yeah, go for it. What's a good name we can start with?
I haven't seen any names suggested in chat yet. I do see two comments that we haven't addressed yet. One was the salvage pod has no N2 tank. That is correct. Blake 81. You don't need it in Salvage Tug, so it was very Spartan. They didn't give you that. And then pixelated presents. Yes, those were the loot spawning objects. So when you create the ship in the game, it tells the game what things to appear. But it does look very festive. So now I'm seeing, I'd say one kind of ship we don't have is a science ship. Another,
That's
Sir
true.
Tanky says big old engines. Bigger the engines, the more aerodynamic it is.
I like that. I'll put a big engine on this bad boy. Maybe two.
You don't have to tell Corey twice to make an
two,
aerodynamic ship.
2 torches, maybe. That'd be fun. If it was a science vessel, a double torch would probably work because it would be quite large. I'm down with a science vessel if you guys, unless you guys have objections.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I was going to say the science ship might be a good kind of puzzle piece fit because we do have the coffin ship, which is essentially a death hot rod. So that base has been somewhat covered, but we don't really have. I think the closest we have is probably the Ibex, which is like a survey ship. So it has like a 2-person berth, and there aren't really any sort of scientific equipment things to put on it in the game. But this could be like what do you think, a larger version, like something for more people?
Yeah, I was thinking, so there are, in the lore of Astronauts, there's a group of American researchers who made it out to Europa, which is one of the moons of, I guess, Jupiter. Is that right? I'm going to be wrong on the stream about basic astronomy. So Europa actually is covered in just miles and miles of ice, and beneath that ice, this is real life too, not just in Astronauts, there's signs of volcanic activity down there. So there's speculation that some of the first alien life could actually be found underneath the oceans of Europa, because the early life, comes from the heat of the core of the Earth, and then from the oceans and various bioforms in there. And so in our world of Astronauts, that life has been sort of found and is being researched, and it's they're basically jellyfish, alien jellyfish, and they're called Lemuria. Is that right, Dan? I believe.
Lusca.
Lusca. Okay. Yes. And so there's a group of researchers out there who are researching these creatures. So we can make this maybe one of the early research ships that landed out there on Europa. So if with that in mind, it needs to be capable of going in and out of atmosphere, right? It needs to be capable of long distance travel, because probably they traveled from, Earth at some point. And any other capabilities we can keep in mind as we build this?
It's old.
Vessel? It is old.
If it's one of the vessels that was early out to Europa, it's going to be I'm going to guess ballpark like 30 years old-ish.
Right. Maybe we can make it the same model, but not the actual ship itself. Maybe a newer
Mark II.
Yes, exactly. Mark II of this vessel.
Also, from the chat, someone mentioned about the rover landing on Mars this week.
Oh yes,
so
we were
maybe
so excited
we could do
about that.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Maybe you could do a name that's similar to that, like like a trait or something. I don't know. What do you think, Dan? What would those kind of people choose?
And the flying one was called Ingenuity, I think, or Ingenuity.
Yeah, we're gonna leave all of this naming and stuff up to chat as I build this thing, and I'll just kind of plug it in. So you guys let me know. So the thing to keep in mind about these ships is that they're all built on a pretty complex, or built to inhabit a pretty complex physics engine. Dan has a background in physics, and the game already has pretty complex environmental physics and mass and weight physics and such. So everything we're adding in this ship is going to have a mass, which contributes to how it flies. And our main goal of any ship is that it's got to be airtight to keep the environment in and the vacuum of space out, I guess is another way to put it. So the first thing we should make sure of is that all our rooms are like airtight. I'm building pretty slow here, but what do you say we start with an airlock to make sure that we keep the vacuum out? And
the airlock is a good choice, not only for the airtightness, but it's one of the only things on a ship you can't uninstall yet, because if you put it in the wrong place, it could screw up the game, basically causing ships to overlap when they dock, and then you can no longer cross from one to the other. So I usually start with the airlock just because it's almost like anything outside the airlock is off limits for placing parts. So, like on the north side of that airlock is off limits.
In addition to this airlock, we're going to put a door in, so that I'll need some floor there, so that we actually, well, the airlock itself is an exterior airlock, and then on the interior is going to have its own door, so that we can keep the environment sort of contained and separated.
So Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about the gas simulation that we're doing there, with moving the gases between the different rooms and airlocks and pumps and stuff, and all the physicsy, chemistry stuff that we're putting behind the scenes to make this all work?
Yeah, we could talk about that. So right now there are three gases that the game cares about: the oxygen, nitrogen, and CO2, and they do a kind of crude fluid simulation or gas simulation from one room to the other. So each room has a pressure. It's not down to per tile, it's per room. But in a ship like this, any closed room can have a pressure and a temperature, and the game will model changes to the pressure and the temperature based on, if you add a heater to the room, the temperature goes up, and if the room is closed, the pressure will also go up. If you open the door, air will gradually spill through the door into the next room. And the one sort of extreme case is if the room has a missing floor or wall, the game considers that to be external space or empty space. So it immediately goes to zero pressure and almost absolute zero temperature. All the temperatures in the game are Kelvin, by the way, and I know a few people have been thrown by that to the point of asking me why it's not using the metric system, and to that I say Kelvin is the metric system.
Kelvin is the metric system, yeah.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
It's the System International, or how we pronounce it in French.
Yes. And, well, Kelvin is basically Celsius minus 273, I think, in case you're ever wondering what the equivalent Celsius temperature is. It's Kelvin plus or minus 273.
In case you're laying awake at night, you can't sleep, and you need to know.
Yeah, well, I've had a few people ask me, like, am I healthy at 300 Kelvin? I was like, you're probably okay.
It seems
high. Sounds harsh, but you're okay.
Kelvin's a funny scale too, because it's really useful for everything except human scale temperatures. So anytime, like, you look outside, I wonder if it feels warm or cold outside, and you look at the number in Kelvin, you just got no idea. So but if you're doing anything in physics or chemistry or anything in the solar system, then Kelvin is the number you want.
Yeah. I mean, you're going from 0 Kelvin outside the ship to basically 300 Kelvin inside the ship, and then the reactor is probably in the tens of thousands or thousands Kelvin, so there's quite a wide range of use cases.
So we have our airlock installed here, just letting you guys, just catching you up on my very slow progress. We have our airlock installed, and so we have floors and we have walls, right? And we assume we always have a ceiling, it goes on automatically. But this is all the vacuum of space out here in black. So right now, even this airlock is not going to have any, the correct mixture of what we need to survive, right? Which would be oxygen and nitrogen, which mimics Earth's atmosphere. So we're going to install that shortly. Before we do, I guess, do you guys have any suggestions of what the first thing we see when we come onto our ship is? Should we have it be a galley, or should we have it be maybe the research station itself? What do you guys think?
Well, I think if we're doing like a research station, we should probably have like a quarantine area where you put the dangerous critters that you picked up from outside,
That's true. And that should go in...
Ellen Ripley agrees.
Yeah, exactly. And is that in the back of the ship? Do we want that near the airlock? Maybe we want that near the airlock so we can vent them in case of emergency. So maybe that's the first thing you see when you come in. So we can do that. We'll make this...
So for anyone that... Oh, sorry,
go ahead. No?
I was just saying, for anyone joining the chat, we should probably just mention that we're in the ship editor at the moment. So this is normally something that only developers get to play with. So the main game doesn't have all this kind of placeholder content. This is just something just behind the scenes that you wouldn't normally get to see as a player, and we're just having a bit of fun today.
Yeah.
I also I wanted to. Charis, you go. You were waiting. So.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna two things. There's a few messages in the chat. So someone said we've got to have those clean white floors and spooky lights for science.
Oh yeah,
it is a science vessel.
I will absolutely do that. We haven't. So the floors are new, which is very exciting. So okay, totally agree. Continue. Sorry.
And then we've also had one of our mods from Discord, Naba, saying that we need a decontamination room. Is it Niba? Is it Niba, right? Because that's how I say it in my head when I see it.
I always hear Naiba when I see it.
It's Naiba to me. We always call you Naiba.
Or Naiba. Is it Japanese? Naiba?
Could be. Let's see if this works. Replace. Yes. Is that too
he says
white?
Close enough.
Wow,
okay.
that is white.
Science. That's some science floors right there.
It can be white and red. Are we going to go with the old Van Hummel?
The what's it called? The Mobile Space Systems Light Framework white panel floor is a pretty good choice for really sterile laboratory environments.
Yeah, let's check that one out. So just a little peek into the lore development of this game. One thing I found really interesting, is this the one you were talking about before we start, Dan? This is very white. Yes.
Nope, there's a whiter one with bumps on it.
Oh, wow.
It gets even whiter.
It gets even whiter. Oh, this one. Oh, yeah, this one's cool. So when I started working on this game, I was very surprised and delighted to sort of, oh, that looks great, to learn that one way the lore is developed in this game, and I assume a little bit in Neo Scavenger as well, was a very close focus on brands and like sort of like companies. And so if you remember in Neo Scavenger, you encounter all kinds of like brands here and there, and it makes the world feel very alive and kind of like some history behind it, because in any good capitalist dystopia, so much of the culture is going to be driven by brands and such. And so a lot of the lore building in this game so far has been thinking about what kind of brands exist out here in the Astronauts world. And so this new patch has all these different floors and walls and stuff that have these different companies that built them, and we're developing histories for these companies, where they kind of exist, who they service, how much they cost, and all that stuff will eventually translate into the game. And so the Mobile Light Framework, Dan, do you want to talk about what their sort of mission as a company is?
Yeah, they're kind of like, if you know what a coach builder is, they do custom hull work and custom interiors, frequently contracted by like a larger manufacturer. And the example I like to throw around is like, if Ford Motors or Maserati or somebody was building a car, and they created sort of the platform for it, Mobile Space Systems would come in and they would do like the seating, they would do the interior, the headliner, maybe even the body panels of the car, and might even be just like a private contractor or a private owner who's like, you know what, I bought this bog standard yacht from Testudo, but I really wanted it to look different, so you guys come in and make it look like a luxury yacht to my specifications, and then Mobile Space Systems can do that. I think we even talked about Mobile Space Systems occasionally making a whole ship, didn't we?
Yeah, they could be contracted, I suppose, to work on a whole ship, or maybe they would do kind of like the interior, and then they would contract out like Testudo or Titan to someone else, to Ryoka, to make the engine itself.
Right.
Okay, so here's our research facility. I believe I have all the walls correct. Could be wrong. We're gonna keep the airlock. We don't have to have the airlock be squeaky clean, right? I assume we can just have it be where you come in and out, but we can change that if you guys would like. So we can continue building out the architecture of this ship, or we can move on and actually try to make this tiny space we have inhabitable, habitable, I should say, and then move on from there. Maybe kind of introducing some environment would be cool here. What do you guys think? Should we make this space livable, or continue with the architecture of the ship?
So just to recap, this was the decontam room?
Yeah. They're talking about getting blasted with the decontamination gas when you come into this area.
Sounds like a job for a turbo pump.
All right, I would love a turbo pump. Now, do we want the turbo pump in the airlock or in the decontam room itself? I guess probably...
Someone said to emergency vent the science lab, just set a bulkhead door in the outer wall. No need to have the lab connected to the airlock.
Okay, so this could be the emergency door itself, and this maybe we won't have this be the crew airlock. We can put the crew airlock somewhere else on the ship.
I think decontamination rules mean everybody who goes in and out of the ship has to go through this room, but somebody might be suggesting you don't need an airlock as the only exit out of this room. You could just have a door that opens right into space.
Oh, man.
So, like a secondary door.
No, I get it.
How else are you going
to
get the alien out when you...
As long as that door is on a remote, then yeah, sure. But you'd have to walk out there and open it yourself, which is pretty badass.
I think that's where Naiba comes in with his conduits and switches.
Let's put a turbo pump in both the airlock here, and we'll put a turbo, or we'll put some normal atmosphere, some regular atmosphere in the this research room here. So this is there are different air pumps in the game, and maybe we should just start with normal O2. How about that? Dan, do you want to talk about how we get oxygen into rooms?
Yeah, so the air pump basically just draws gas out of a sealed container on one side, which can either be a canister or a whole room, and deposits it on the other side, which can also be a canister or a whole room. And up until recently, that was a one-way deal, but we recently added a reverse button on the control panel so that you could basically use a single pump as an airlock pressurizer and depressurizer. And on top of that, the turbo air pump that he was just laying out, that is meant to rapidly pressurize and depressurize an airlock, like in a matter of minutes, in-game time of minutes. Whereas the other one is really for more like day-to-day use for the whole ship and tends to be slower.
So that slower airlock is what you're looking at here, air pump. This is a little trick I learned from Naiba of getting an air pump into a closed room. You can put a little wall sticking out, but you can see at the bottom of the air pump is where you're going to load in your gas, and then the other side of the air pump, it actually pumps it into the room. So we're going to put one here on there. This is a very white room. It's so bright. We'll put another one there. Now, they're unpowered right now. We'll power them up in a minute. But on the bottom side, any good room is going to need a mix of good old oxygen and a little bit of N2 as well, a little bit of nitrogen.
I should actually clarify that because it comes up a lot. As far as survivability goes, O2 is what matters right now. You need 20 kilopascals of O2 in a room or in your pressure suit to be breathing normally. As you get down towards 15 kilopascals, you start to get hypoxic and you'll start to see symptoms. And the lower that is, the faster you get hypoxic and eventually asphyxiate. Nitrogen is mostly, like, you can safely ignore it. It's in there because in a normal pressurized environment, our atmosphere is 80% roughly nitrogen and 20% oxygen. So it's more normal what we'd experience on Earth. So if you can afford to have both, that's more comfortable. But I think even with NASA, like EVA suits and stuff, they tend to just have an O2 mix.
Yep.
So that you don't inflate like a balloon.
Yeah, that question comes up a lot. Like, can you have too much oxygen in a room? And we've actually looked into it and talked about it. And believe it or not, there's a lot of NASA missions out there where they just pump a lower pressure of pure oxygen into some of these space vessels, which made me think, are they on some type of euphoria or high? Because, there's like these oxygen bars all around that people talk about. And honestly, still not sure. Like, I imagine if
Yeah,
they're doing space missions in oxygen, pure oxygen, maybe this idea that if you're running pure oxygen, is a bit of a myth. I'm not sure, but in any case, it won't kill you. So
We were talking about this in the last meeting, weren't we? I was like, surely you could get dizzy. Like, surely something. Like, I feel like maybe that's just a common misconception, though. It seems like unless it's just a ton all at once, it doesn't really
I think
seem
the
to
pressure difference, like if you pressurize or depressurize too quickly, that can cause serious health issues. But
right, the bends.
they've done.
Apparently, it's the blood vessels in your lungs, I think. I don't
Maybe
know.
we should be careful about giving bunk science about, like, someone's going to go out there and just pump oxygen into their body. And
I mean,
So I put my mouth on an O2 canister and look what happens.
Dan told me that I could do this.
Don't take medical advice from video games, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you notice right
Important
now,
life.
this is very important to shipbuilding, and it comes up a lot in the game itself. The conduits, right? So obviously this entire ship needs to be getting both electricity and data, but for now just electricity to different parts of the ship. And the way we do that is through these conduit networks. They're basically just big bundles of wire, and they're moving power through the ship. And you can actually see, if you click both, this happens in game too, you can click on this and see where the power is and where it lacks and where it's moving in the ship. So right now we have these conduits going to these devices, but they're not working, right? Because there's no power. So now we're getting into the electrical systems in Astronauts, which are done via battery or reactor, or usually some combination of both. So for now, I'm just going to slap a battery in, and as long as it's connected to a conduit, I believe it should power the ship. Did I put it in the wrong way, Dan?
And once you get the battery in there, we can actually switch to real lighting instead of debug lighting.
Right. Great, awesome. So this is real lighting, and we don't have any lights yet. And I also seem to have missed some conduits, so I'm going to put in the conduits to make sure we are getting power to our air pumps. Great. So if we turn off the lights now, we see our little air pumps on, we see our batteries on, but our ship is dark because we've not put any lights in. So let's put some lights in. Any pertinent chat? Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a comment there about pure oxygen environments and things burning. And the other thing that happens in pure oxygen environments is some things which don't burn at normal atmospheric pressure. If you're in a 100% oxygen environment, they do burn.
Absolutely.
So yeah, pure oxygen is quite a dangerous substance for many reasons.
It basically just lowers the ignition point of a whole bunch of things, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so we were talking about the Apollo missions. There was a very tragic, I think it's Apollo 1 incident, very, very early on in the Apollo program, where that happened to a version of the CSM, and all the oxygen caught fire. So actually, in the more recent missions, they do put a little bit of nitrogen into those ships when they're orbits or when they're planet side, and then they kind of like siphon it out once they actually get up into vacuum, I believe is how it works. So yes, it can be very dangerous. I know Naiba made a ship that pumps pure oxygen into it, and once we introduce fire into this game, I just don't know.
Fire is coming.
I don't know how safe that's going to be. So maybe a good mix of N2 and O2 is the best way forward. Okay, so we're out of debug lighting here.
That is one of the cool things about this game, though. I just wanted to add, like, we get to research all this cool stuff, about NASA missions and deep sea diving and all this kind of stuff. And, like, for a lot of kind of fantasy games, you're just kind of making stuff up. And, like, you just kind of, I think it would be kind of like this. But for this game, we can actually go to the primary sources and actually find out the real information and then translate that into our game. So it's really cool having this kind of, this lore, which is literally just science. We can jump on Wikipedia or pull out encyclopedias or data sheets and these kind of things. and it's pre-built for us. We can just go and get this information. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's been the most exciting part of the writing process, is just learning about Apollo. I didn't know anything. Well, I didn't know enough about space before starting, but like learning all about the Apollo missions to be able to work in this world has been super fun.
The one downside, on a related note, nothing to do with shipbuilding, but with Neo Scavenger, I had just a plethora of mythology and legend to draw from for things like cryptids and supernatural occurrences and belief systems. Here in space, it's like we're in an area where people have not lived very long, and they brought all their baggage with them, but like what kinds of customs and legends and mythologies developed there, because this is still the Neo Scavenger universe.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's aliens or monsters or weird events, that stuff is still going to happen once I'm able to start creating I guess the space for these things to happen. And it's interesting to think about, okay, well, what will our future mythologies be like up in space? What will the future cryptids be like in space?
Yeah, it's like the intersection of sort of like cultural world building that you see in any culture here on Earth, and sci-fi, where there are new worlds out there. What kind of horrors come out of like the vacuum and such. Very awesome. So just to update us on our quote-unquote ship here, we have a floating room. We have air pumping into it, so that's good. Somebody could theoretically live in here for as long as these canisters last, right? And then there's power now, so as long as that battery stays powered, they will live. So we can move on and maybe make something to actually push this thing around in space, some version of a engine, maybe just a standard RCS intake engine. Does that sound good? And are there any questions?
What RCS stands for? I mean, that one comes up quite a bit. Do we need to talk about RCS at all?
Yeah, I'm happy to go into that. Or Dan, do you want to talk about the difference between like an
Sure.
RCS and we'll get into Torch later, but yeah, let's talk about RCS.
Yeah, so we right now we are limited to local space around K-Leg, the boneyard that Corey mentioned earlier. So that's mostly maneuvering jets in that space, and that uses something called an RCS system, which stands for Reaction Control System. And there are a lot of different ways to do RCS thrust. NASA tends to use, I think it's like a hydroxine. It's a mixed gas, and hydrazine. They combust actually when they come in contact with each other, right? But in Ostranauts, it's actually a cold gas thrusting system. So it's literally just pressurized gas being forced out of nozzles, and in this case, it's nitrogen being used. So it has fewer chemical needs and fewer temperature needs. Most of it just comes down to having a source of N2, being able to pressurize it to the pressure you need to get reasonable thrust, and then venting that pressured N2. And we have something called an RCS thruster, which is basically a multi-directional thruster that shoots the gas in whichever direction is needed to turn the ship or propel the ship. And we also have an RCS intake distributor item, which draws gas out of reservoirs, which are usually N2 canisters. And for now, it automatically just pipes that to wherever you put the RCS thrusters. And those are a fairly self-contained system, as long as you have a nav console for controlling it and power to power them.
So you're probably familiar with this from other sci-fi worlds. You'll see, or even just watching, contemporary depictions of NASA space programs. You'll see a ship just kind of like barely moving in vacuum with little puffs of air like blasting out. That's an RCS system. It's essentially a relatively simple system where you have an intake regulator that controls, blasts of air. So it's slow-ish, I suppose. But slow is kind of a weird thing to talk about in space. It's low power, but because you're moving in vacuum, if you just keep blasting that air, you're going to keep gaining speed, velocity. So when people start the game, they're often like, oh, like, can I go to Earth? You know, we're starting really far away from Earth, and it's like, well, theoretically,
yes.
yeah. Like,
how much time do you have?
How much time do you have? How much gas do you got on board? Like, maybe. I bet Naiba's tried, or some of our more intrepid players. But for now, like, an RCS system is highly maneuverable, and you can move, like, really, really, it's like granular, right? Like, you can move super slow and precise, and that's how they do, like, space station crafting and stuff now. It's just with this kind of really precise RCS movement. So what it looks like in our game is an intake regulator with a bunch of nitrogen, or you can use oxygen inside
in a pinch,
of it. And we're getting into the world of prestige parts versus non-prestige parts, but the Miura Hydra RCS intake regulator is the Rolls-Royce of intake regulators. It can take in 4 different N2 canisters, and it's got a lot more power. And then the normal intake regulator is this Kang 2202, which can only take 1. But I imagine a vessel like this, well, I don't know. What do you guys think? Dan, what do you think? Is this ship new enough to have a Miura?
My rule of thumb is if it's industrial or something like this, it would probably be the low value one. What is it? It's not the Kang.
Yeah, the Kang.
So it's the kind of thing where you'd buy off the shelf parts. It's not going to be like the sport luxury equipment that, you know, like a Porsche or Maserati would spring for.
Yeah, and a science vessel like this would probably be under torch for long distance travel, I think, probably relatively often. So maybe their RCS is maybe a little less important than their torch.
I don't think they would do a ton of. Well, I guess it depends on the mission, right? And that might be like you configure a basic platform and then it gets modified for different missions. But like if you were a survey ship that was mostly interested in doing scientific analysis of, say, a planet, you would mainly need to get to planet orbit, get into an orbit that you want, and then just keep taking readings for a really long time and then come back home. That would not require a lot of RCS maneuverability and endurance, but I think if you were something like an asteroid studying science vessel, it might be the opposite, right? You don't have very far to go to get into the asteroid belt from a nearby port, but you are going to have to do a lot of maneuvering to get around things.
Well, Europa around Jupiter is a really interesting system. Like you've got all these moons orbiting really close in, and some quite far out as well. But the Jupiter system's really tricky because you've got all this radiation coming from the planet itself. So what the NASA missions have tended to do is they've been in these really high orbits, but the orbit is such that it swoops in close to the planet and then buzzes past the moon and then escapes back out to get away from the radiation. So there's really highly elliptical orbits to get in and out of the moons. So I don't quite know what we're going to do with our science ship here, because it's really hard to shield the radiation around Europa. So it's going to be a bit tricky.
Well, we're just gonna.
You're going to need a radiation room.
I assume all the scientists are just going to get powers like Bruce Banner, and we're just going to have Hulks in space. That's how I would hope it works.
I like the different places that we went to there. Dan was like radiation room. Corey's like, we're going to turn into the Hulk. Mine was, what if we just did a double layer of walls?
Yeah, triple layer.
Oh, God.
It'd be a heavy ship, but we could.
I wonder if we could,
I don't think it'd work. I
I
just think it's the first place my brain went to.
I think it absolutely would work. Why not? I guess it depends what the walls are made out of and all that. By the way, I'm not
the radiation was was not something that's in there yet, but it's also on the list. Like fire, it's one of the things that is a legitimate hazard and probably a fun system to be sort of strategizing around. So, like, you know, if you are a vessel in open space all the time, you're getting bombarded by solar radiation. If you are a vessel in Jupiter's sphere of influence, you're dealing with the radiation coming from Jupiter. And, you know, a lot of these ships that may be designed specifically for high radiation saturation. So I mean, multiple walls is a perfectly valid approach
seems completely reasonable
to shielding. So.
I don't play with the Kang very much. I'm a Miura guy. You know, I only do the fanciest of ships. So this is actually the first time I've installed a Kang. I'm doing it right though, right? You put the into, it just holds one into, and then you just conduit up to it. Okay, great.
That's one of the drawbacks that makes the Miura more attractive. The Kang has basically a 2-point or a 2-tile footprint, and it takes in 1 tank, whereas the Miura can take in 4. The ratio is better with a Miura, and the power consumption is better. But some of the ship designs, you can get creative with the placement of the Kangs so that they interlock a little bit. As long as you can still walk up to the tank and uninstall it, you can still get them pretty tight.
Cool. So I have a poor excuse for an engine room down here that we're working on. Just has a couple of these RCS intake regulators, which essentially just control how much coal gas is pumped into the system. But right now we don't have thrusters to actually make this work. This is just, I assume this travels through the conduits, but this is just, you know, gas being blasted around and not sort of expelled into space to actually be able to move our ship here. So we're going to put in some actual thrusters, which are called lifts in the game, and I believe they're made by Halverson, which is a sort of parts manufacturing company. And you'll see here that one side of the thruster looks like a little gas blaster there on the left side, and then the other side kind of bolts onto the ship itself. So we're just going to put some thrusters here and there. I don't know how accurate, I know the mass is accurate, Dan, but I don't know how accurate it is to like how many thrusters we throw down on this thing. I always just put a bunch on.
Each thruster is accounted for in terms of lateral acceleration. So if you are trying to move from point A to point B, having more thrusters will accelerate you there faster. Similarly, it'll rotate you faster, and they care about the mass of your ship. What they don't currently care about is the placement. So like the game isn't calculating moment of inertia and fulcrum and lever or torque values. So you could put them technically anywhere as long as the game doesn't complain about the thruster intersecting something.
So it's going to check how many thrusters are on this thing, how much does it weigh, and then calculate your movement that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Each one is a functioning thruster and will drain your N2 reservoir accordingly.
Oh, right.
So there's just a couple of comments here in the chat, and I just wanted to confirm with you, Dan, that because this is a video game, there's no radiation coming from the video game to the player, and you can't actually get cancer from playing this game. Can you confirm that for me?
There's a caveat there. Are you using a cathode ray tube or an LCD or LED? Because the radiation exposure is different.
I only use tube. I'm a tube TV. I'm over here playing Smash Brothers Melee on a tube TV while we do this because of frame rate issues.
I can say I spent the majority of my childhood staring down a cathode ray cannon that was pointed at my face. So, and I'm still here.
Yeah, but it made you super smart, just like Bruce Banner. So.
See, you were right.
Yeah. I'm putting a bunch of loose in there in the engine room, so when we actually, if someone's unfortunate enough to find our space vessel, they at least find a bunch of N2 to be able to blast themselves.
They'll be able to get home.
Yeah, get themselves to a better spaceship.
Killer Ravok asked in chat, this might have been what Chris was riffing on, will there be different radiation types? And I would love that for that to be the case. And frequently, if you ask me a question of that form, will there be blank in the game? The answer is probably, I would love for there to be blank in the game. So it's more a matter of timing and kind of dependencies. So some things will have to go in before radiation becomes like a viable system we can build. But yeah, like building a ship for long-term survival of human occupants, I think radiation is absolutely going to have to be a consideration.
So far, just to catch us up on our ship here, we have our airlock, which can be turbo pumped in and out to kind of like clean it or anything to get the air in and out. If you'd like it, it takes a couple in-game minutes. Then you walk into our, what eventually will be either a decontam room or even like a work room. But what it has in here is you know, a minor environmental system with N2 pumping into the room and O2 pumping into the room, and a battery powering all of that. And now we have a very simple RCS engine thruster package, which has these Kang intake regulators here, which you can slap one into or O2 canister into, and you can maneuver throughout near space with these thrusters we've installed. Now the only problem at this point is how do you control this thing, right? Like it works, but there's no control right now. So that's why you would need a navigation console, which is our sort of all-purpose, I guess, cockpit, for lack of a better term, for you know, where the captain's going to sit and maneuver this ship. Where's a good place to put the captain's room? You guys have any suggestions for that? Where do we want to sit and steer this bad boy? Maybe off here? To the side?
We've got a message asking if there's going to be any Roombas in the game to clean the floors.
No, it's not. It's not asking about Roombas. It's asking about Rumbas.
Is that a different thing? Because I kind of want
a Rumba is
like,
a dance, isn't it?
space Roomba to like clean up the trash. That would be better
you're
than like
right,
a crew to do it. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
The trash is a problem when you find a new ship. I mean, there's so much. I'm going to take this thruster off, by the way, and move our back.
And getting back to the, I would love to have blank in the game. Dirty stuff would be great. Like if these tiles could get grimy after lots of use, or when you inevitably get nauseous and vomit in the game, because that seems to happen to everybody. That should be something that requires cleanup. And part of your moving into a new ship experience should be like, oh God, what is this on the floor? And CO2, similar answer there. Like right now, it's a very crude life support system where we're basically just pumping gases around and frequently losing gas. Getting to the point where we could actually scrub the CO2 out and recycle air. I think that's almost a certainty. It's just not in there yet. And before I get off the mic, Corey, we are approaching the end of our hour.
Cool.
And it's up to you if you want to stop at the scheduled time in a couple minutes, or if you want to go long. I think at least I and Charis are okay to go either way. I don't know if Chris wants to or not, but just heads up.
I can stay on until we have a engine room and a torch, just so we can explain those two systems, and that should get us about 20 minutes from now, especially if I go a little faster.
Sure. That's good.
That's maybe my stopping point, so 20 so minutes from now. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
I think we thought that maybe we'd be able to get a whole ship done in an hour, but that's not really how it works.
Well, it is a ship. Is it a good ship? That's the question.
Kirovak points out that the pumps are dumb right now. They will only pump or not pump, depending on whether you turn them on or not.
Of course. Yeah, that's another good system to point out. Thank you for pointing that out. We will do that first. Essentially, who is it? Was it who pointed that out?
Kirovak.
Oh boy, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that.
Kilravik.
Okay. As Kilravik is pointing out, these pumps can have sensors on them that are connected to them that kind of look into the room to kind of see what the gas distribution is, and then, you know, respond accordingly by turning on or off, I believe at various speeds. And that's done through an alarm. So we're going to do that real quick. We're going to put an O2 sensor alarm in the room, and we'll put an N2 one as well. So let's put them up here so they're powered. Right now it is not happy. And we'll put an N2 on as well. And we can actually pin them. Ooh, oh no, I took off the pump. We can pin them by, how do we do this? Yes. This is the oxygen, and we're gonna pin it to the oxygen sensor like this. And so now it's wired to that sensor. And you can put it on auto now. And now it's gonna be pumping or not, depending on what the sensor tells it. Oh, and look, we went green. Perfect. In the process, I have destroyed our other air pump, but I will work through that really quick.
Muscle memory, you right-clicked for the context menu.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, turn off, turn off! This is all stuff you do in-game, by the way, guys. Like, that's what Dan's referring to there, if you haven't played yet, but you're doing this with your character walking around at, like, real-time speed, picking up a canister, moving it, installing it, which is... frequently with insufficient air to breathe. Right, so it's a different beast when you're actually in game. Obviously, it's a little bit more stressful than our leisurely shipbuilding we're doing here. We're gonna wire
Dan,
this.
do you want to talk about time?
It's kind of... Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, Dan, do you want to talk about how time works in the game, about how you can speed up and pause and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So the game is paused and fast forwardable. So it plays in real time, but you can pause anytime you want. And the time scale right now goes between a quarter speed and 16 times speed. For the most part, the game tries to pause when a significant thing happens to you. There are still some gaps in that, and I'll hopefully fix that over time. And then conversation is kind of the way I eventually see also like physical combat in terms of fist fighting working in the future, where it'll raise a UI, play whatever you just said or did in real time, and then pause to wait for your response. So that's sort of like an auto pause and continue. And then, so people have asked many times, will there be combat in the game? I kind of see that working the same way, like kind of feeling like Neo Scavenger's combat did, except with real time and pause. And then just because it's related, ship-to-ship combat probably also will eventually be in the game, but there are just a bunch of other systems we need to put into place first.
You guys will see while Dan was talking, I put a hole in the floor, and like our alarm immediately responded because the air that we do have in this ship is like rushing out. So this is similar to the system that both Chris and Dan were talking about before. And now cannot find the appropriate floor, so we're just gonna put a red floor there, so it stops. And look, it did.
Kill Rock finally corrected me, and I said it wrong every time, so it's Kill Rock.
Silent B, apparently.
He hails from Canada. Probably.
Ship-to-ship combat is going to be awesome because it's all going to be in real time, you know. So you're going to be hurling these things through space, trying to target where the other spacecraft will be in the future, and then hoping to make contact, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have to plot where you are, but then account for the lag in the speed of light, and plot where you were and where you will be.
I can't tell if you guys are joking or not. Is this serious? Are you?
Are we gonna have space lasers too? I don't remember.
I was gonna say we were half joking.
I mean, I know there's gonna have to be some. Well, yeah, I imagine ship combat being like. I'm reading the Expanse books right now, and in those, it's just a whole lot of like negotiating over comms, and one person presses a button and the other ship is gone. You know, like.
I think that's the way I'd like things to feel. Is it's mostly about posturing and preparation, like detecting and identifying your target, tracking your target, countermeasures for both sensors and weapons. I think all of those things would be a lot of fun to play with. But when somebody starts pulling triggers, I think combat's going to be over pretty quickly.
But if there were ballistics and like throwing things, as Chris mentioned, that would be incredible. Like just a space trebuchet. I guess that happens in the Expanse too, right? They throw asteroids at each other here and there, or they threaten to anyway.
Can I just quickly say, please can we avoid spoilers?
Oh,
I just
shoot.
Sorry.
Oh, my bad.
I was just like, oh no, please, come on. I'm so sorry. It's good so far though, hey? Like
well, I'm actually behind most people, so I'll put the same caveat for myself. I'm reading the books and have not seen much of the show, so what I'm talking about is like on page 2 or 3 where they just sort of lightly say like, hey, I guess anybody who understands can like throw an asteroid off a ship onto a planet. They always call it like down the gravity well, right? So anyway, that's hopefully not spoilery. Then I will stop talking about the Expanse completely now.
I'm so sorry. we can if it's obviously necessary.
It is not.
I think tying into
still
that,
talk about
the tech
Firefly.
level. Sorry, you were saying, Charis? I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just saying we can still talk about Firefly though, because I know a lot of Dan's inspo comes from Firefly. That's like the feel that you want for the game, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, in terms of technology, the Expanse is a pretty good analog. So a lot of the things you see done in the Expanse are comparable to what I like to have in this game. So if you want to kind of dig into the science parts. But for kind of the more role-playing social aspects of the game, I really liked, and the kind of wheeling and dealing gray market activity stuff is definitely more like Firefly and to a degree Cowboy Bebop, where it's the characters don't always get along. They have their quirks, but they're still kind of like a dysfunctional family on your ship. And you're just trying to make ends meet in this world that's basically designed to make the honest worker lose. And I've recently started thinking about like, one way I think I'll codify that a bit more is even just things like pricing in the game. If an object is associated with freedom of mobility or the ability for you to get outside the system and live on your own, it's going to be really expensive. But things that kind of make you dependent on the system are going to be really cheap.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's kind of the tone of the universe that we're going for.
That's so cool. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's also cool. To that end, we can start talking about the torch now, which is, I think, people's favorite sort of science/lore thing to talk about and think about in this game, because so far what we've talked about is all, at least on our ship here, is like pretty much existing tech in the world we all share right now, right? An RCS system, an environment system, a battery. Is there anything in our ship yet that's just completely impossible on Earth, the Earth we all share right now, Dan? Or
I'd say the biggest departure from what we have in modern day Earth is probably just some of the efficiencies or power levels on things might be a little bit enhanced. Like the battery energy density might be a bit better than what you get in a lithium ion battery right now.
Right.
But otherwise, I think this is pretty, in some cases, even lower than our current tech level. Like people pointed out that the nav console looks like something out of the 80s. And that's a deliberate choice because I like a lot of the industrial design of older control panels and things, so you'll see a lot of that.
But
I think
now,
it's kind of worth
go ahead,
pointing
Chris.
out too. I think it's kind of worth pointing out too. I mean, because we're just so familiar with it, we don't even see it anymore. But the world of Ostranauts and that we're building here, it's in 2 dimensions, right? So it's top down. We don't really have a third dimension where stuff can kind of stack layer upon layer. And if you see in the solar system that we've built in Astronauts as well, that's also in 2 dimensions. So you can kind of move around in the flat plane, and you can rotate in that one dimension. But we don't have all the complexity that comes from spinning around in 3D, like in Kerbal Space Program or something like that.
Right.
So it's very much, it's a 2D world, like a reflection of us here in the real world in 3 dimensions, but simplified quite a bit because of that.
And that was definitely a deliberate choice, just in terms of approachability. Like, I wanted the game to feel like it had realistic things in it, but I didn't want the average person to be so frustrated with like orienteering in 3D and kind of making all those numbers align. So cutting out one of the 3 dimensions gamifies it a bit more, and I hope makes it a little bit more approachable for a larger audience, even though I've made it dreadfully difficult in other ways. So.
Yeah, that open pod is a
so from the chat, we have someone. We had Killrock, which is much easier to pronounce than we previously thought. Who mentioned that in the shipbuilder and the assets image folder, they've seen some more consoles. Do they already have a purpose? Is there any point in installing them?
I think, are those the kiosks maybe that we're talking about?
Possibly, because I don't think we have any of the like consoles yet, do we?
There's at least like a group of 4 or 5 kiosks in the game. Things like the green phone booth, the yellow career kiosk, the red self-help kiosk. He says not kiosks.
Not kiosks.
I'm trying to... Was there another...
Are you using mods? I mean, I know some other people have probably cooked up some nav, some different nav consoles.
Actually, I think it might be some of the stuff Michael created for the interceptor ship, the police ship.
Oh, cool.
So there's like a terminal, and I think there's even one sitting on the bar top.
Not from a mod, no.
No, this is Michael. He's one of the developers, and it's in the image folder from the base game. So there's like the terminal, there's chairs and tables. Those don't actually function yet. They're just decor items, and you can't uninstall or reinstall them. But in the long term, I would like there to be objects like those available. And just in case the question was also kind of asking, will there be other like action stations for a ship, like besides just navigation stuff? I kind of don't know the answer to that question. I'm waiting to see how things organically play out. So, for example, the nav console is already pretty well dominated by flying and docking procedure stuff. If we were going to do something like sensors, detection, tracking, and countermeasures, like you'd probably need a completely new screen for that because there's a lot of stuff going on. And whether that's like another adjacent screen on the nav console, or there's like a separate object in the game that you would sit at to do those things, or will there be like a separate docking and navigation terminal? I'd like to kind of play that one by ear because I think it could be cool either way. So we'll have to see. Did that answer your question, Killrock?
The as Killrock responds here, I just want to point out that we're moving into the more theoretical side of Astronaut's design here, which is the reactor itself. But the reactor here is based in some theoretical hard sci-fi concepts that I always found super fascinating. Dan, you can talk about that if you'd like, the internal confinement reaction mechanism. But
inertial
yes.
confinement.
Yes. But essentially, this is the reactor here. Before you start, Dan, I'm just going to point out this is the reactor itself, and then which is a very expensive unit in the astronauts world. If you find one on a ship, you're very lucky. And you're even more lucky if you find complete fuel tanks to power said reactor, which is this D2O tank and this helium tank. D2O is like heavy water. So let's talk about these reactors.
So this is also very similar to what you see in the Expanse. Inertial confinement is a type of fusion that it has a pellet of fusile material, helium-3 and heavy water, and a bank of lasers all fire at that target simultaneously from all directions, and the explosion of that target, like inward, compresses the fuel to fusion ignition, and the fusion ignition creates heat and energy, which, depending on how you set it up, can be harnessed to create usable electricity. So the premise for the energy capture is something called an MHD, or magnetohydrodynamic generator, which kind of works like your typical water turbine or hydroelectric generator, except instead of water passing through a turbine, it's charged particles passing through sort of the equivalent turbine. And it's not 100% efficient, so not all the energy generated by the reactor can be captured and turned into electricity. But on the other hand, the amount of energy created by one of these reactors is so massive that it almost doesn't matter. Like, once you have one of these things running on your ship, you could basically power anything, like a small city if you wanted. So energy is abundant and cheap as long as you have one of these reactors, but the fuel that runs these reactors, helium-3 and mostly helium-3, is a little bit more scarce. There's a few places where you can get it easily, and other places where it's harder to come by.
Yeah, and we get a lot of questions about these torches, because right now you can find them and you can rig them up, but you're not flying under torch. You're flying under RCS, and there's questions like, how do we fly under torch? And it's a pretty significant question in the astronauts world, only because of the expense that Dan mentioned, but also, I mean, you're doing little nuclear explosions behind your ship when you fly on one of these, right? So they're kind of like safety regulations in place for why you would, or where and how you could fly under torch are sort of an open question we're discussing a lot. But for now, you don't have the software overrides to be able to use this thing. Probably in the future, a significant part of the game will be about obtaining the ability to fly your torch engine to get you into like deeper parts of space.
Yeah, and it's come up a couple times, travel times in the game, which again, if you want to see it in action, the Expanse is a pretty good indicator. So it's basically accelerating halfway to your target and then decelerating the other half.
The old flip and burn.
Flip and burn. It's very fuel intense. Like, you need a lot of reaction mass to do that. Hence, we're going to have a lot of fuel capacity in these ships. And it's not really apparent by looking at the top-down view, but sort of what I picture being the reality for these ships is, this is the top deck we're looking at, where the humans live, and the rest of the ship is some amount of mechanical and storage space below decks. So when you are accelerating, down is into the screen, like towards the feet of the people occupying this floor, and up is towards their ceiling, or towards us, the viewer. We're basically flying like a skyscraper through space. But me being me, and I think a lot of people are like this, we like our Millennium Falcons and our Serenities and our ships, which are designed more like a belly lander. So this ship layout editor kind of lets you play with designs however you want. You can pretend it's as deep or as shallow as you want, and whatever shape you want. So,
yeah, one of the few times you kind of get a sense for how deep these ships go below is if you guys saw when I was installing these big tanks. there's actually a big footprint outside of them, around them, like around the outside in a ring, and that's the tank going deep into the bowels of the ship, because these tanks are full of tons and tons of combustible materials. I don't know how much.
Like imagine
but
a tanker truck or a semi-truck carrying fuel, and this is just the tip of the trailer extending down into the floor.
Cool, so we have our ship pretty much with a lot of the parts you would need complete. We have, while we were talking about the reactor down here, I went ahead and installed a heater and a cooler and linked that up to our thermostat. Everything is connected via conduits, and the reactor in the back works. So this is a sort of space-worthy vessel, but maybe isn't up to the function we had discussed of it being a science vessel. So maybe in a future time we'll kind of build this out to put some more of those materials in it, including places for the crew to sleep, maybe a brief galley, stuff like that. But for now, this is a space-worthy vessel. Should we try to put it in crew sim, or just let people find it out there in the game proper?
If you want to take it for a spin, I won't stop you.
All right,
That would be interesting.
We have a name. Charis, were you just about to say that?
No, I was just going to say it'd be interesting to see Corey try and fly on stream.
Oh no. Well, before I embarrass myself, should we name, let's name this vessel, because I guess eventually, like we said, we want people to find it out there, so.
Chat seems to be circling around Radiant Oddity.
Ooh,
which is quite nice.
That's
I like
beautiful.
that.
I think I got a
Awesome.
Valentine recently that called me a Radiant Odyssey. That's gorgeous. Is it make? No. What are we? Designation, yes. Does Corey
Also,
does Corey know how to
this
spell
is-
Odyssey challenge? Odyssey?
The make is going to be the manufacturer, so you want, I think, probably MSS for this, or Mobile Space Systems.
Yeah, let's do that. Did I spell Odyssey correctly? I know I'm a writer,
Oh,
but I'm also
it's
Montessori educated.
Oddity, not Odyssey.
Oh, Oddity.
Yeah.
So the idea behind the make is that this is like the Chevy, the Ford, whatever, and the model is this sort of, if they create a bunch of different versions of this ship, right? So any idea for a model?
The model is actually the Radiant Oddity. Sorry to do this to you.
That's fine. That's fine.
The Radiant Oddity would probably be the model name, or like Radiant Oddity Mark II.
Oh,
or
duh, and
LT.
then the captain names their ship, the designation.
The designation, well, we've been using that as kind of like science ship, freighter, shuttle. It's kind of loosey-goosey right now, and I'm not sure how much we're going to use the designation, but it kind of gives you an idea for the role of the ship. So in this case, we said science ship. You could call it a science ship.
Is the Radiant... Oh. Sorry, I closed my stream here.
And the template with the $ in front of it just tells the game when the game spawns one of these, give it automatically a name from the pool of valid names and valid origins.
We'll do that then. Does it matter if it's cap?
$ caps template.
Look at that, I'm coding. So let's see this bad boy in action. Can I actually fly it via crew sim? Does it place me in?
You should be. It'll throw a random character into the ship, and then you can walk to the nav console and attempt to fly it. You've saved it, right?
Oh my god, I didn't. Good thinking. Okay.
Oh my god.
Yes, always save. Save early and often.
All right, the Radiant Oddity. Probably Naiba's the one to ask about this. I'm just wondering about the power right now, you know? Like, I feel like it's well powered. I got a bunch of batteries. I might have to just go back there and start the reactor, which will be another adventure. But anyway, here we go. Let's see if this... We're going to put it in simulation in the game here and see if...
There's one thing you're missing, but it won't stop you from flying. Your airlock turbo pump directly vents into space. It has no reservoir.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, we're not leaving anyway, hopefully.
It's okay. We'll just only ever dock with K-Leg.
Let's do a little walking tour of the beautiful Radiant Oddity. Here we have our alarm
What's your
system.
character's name? What's going on there?
Xavier Savage.
Xavier?
Yeah.
Nice. Is Savage in the name because of Adam Savage, by the way, or is that just random?
It's random. I actually did a top 1,000 names kind of thing from, I forget what, one of the census documents. And I tried to include mostly names from North American, Central African, and Chinese cultures, because those are some of the more prominent cultures in Astronauts. So they're kind of the most common names you would see in real world data now.
Where do they start?
I like that.
Where
I
am
think that's cool.
You're probably inside the sun. If you were to zoom out, you would find inside the sun.
Let's see where I am. Okay, the planet view's not working. Okay, I'm not exactly inside the sun. I'm like...
Well, I think you're being ejected violently from the sun at 930 kilometers per second.
Oh, I sure am. It doesn't feel that way. Look at the VREL up here. Wonderful.
Yeah, you're moving.
Maybe I can make it to, maybe I can make it somewhere.
Oh my god.
There's okay right here. Man, I'm moving fast. Whoa!
That's 900 million meters per second, which is not quite the speed of light, but you're getting up there. So.
Never before.
Looks like an escape trajectory. It looks like you're heading to the next star system over.
I think you'll be well into the next star system before you recover your acceleration.
Oh yeah, I'm not. Oh, I was just thinking I can use my RCS system to recover my acceleration, but of course I can't if I'm going that fast. Well, the Radiant Oddity is being blasted into deep space flow.
Is there any way to stop this right now? Can we?
No. I mean, I'd have
You
to.
might need to use the.
I could use the reactor.
The rescue.
Oh yeah, I could use the rescue function. Sure. I was gonna see if I could just vent all the reactor. No, that won't work. Sure, we can use the rescue function. The little cheat here. Let's do that.
Yep. Naiba corrects me. The speed of light is 300 million. So you were going about 3 times the speed of light?
So is this the fastest ship in game confirmed? Or will be, maybe, in game?
Yeah,
well,
we don't have relativity, do we? We've just got... We have time delay because of the speed of light communication delay, but I don't think we're modeling relativity yet, are we?
No, I did not want to tackle relativity when I was...
Why not? I can't imagine
when I was
why
flying.
not. Okay, so now we... Wait. Yeah, now we're at OKLG.
So you would probably have to pay your fees before you can undock again if you were planning on flying.
Let's see if they stop me. They probably will.
Dan, do you want to do a quick rundown of what OKLG actually means in universe? Because maybe some on our stream aren't familiar with that term.
Sure. So the station is actually called... testing my memory here. I can't remember the station's full name, but the colloquial name is K-Leg, which is Nigerian slang for all messed up. And OKLG is kind of like the airport code. So if you were to fly into John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City, it's I'll choose Edmonton, Alberta. The airport code there is YEG. The code doesn't always make a lot of sense given the English name, but in this case, the O is a designation for other because this is not really part of a major planetary system. This K-Leg is an asteroid that kind of follows an elliptical orbit that goes a little bit on the inner planets and a little bit past the Mars orbit. Um,
And that's a real asteroid, right? This is a real asteroid in
Yeah.
the real universe.
yeah, all of the celestial objects in Ostranauts are real, and except for any of the artificial ones that are thrown in there. So you can theoretically visit even down to quite a few of the smaller planetoids and moons in the map.
So this is that station that I'm walking around in now, and we had some docking fees we had to pay before they let us leave again, so I sold them some of our heavy water to pay off those fees, and now we have 5,000 bucks. I think I did that right.
Yep.
And we
Naiba
actually-
just reminded me of the name Namdi Azikiwe Station, which is also Nigerian. That was actually, for anyone wondering why all this Nigerian stuff, there are 3 space elevators in the Astronauts universe, or there were. One of them is down in Brazil, one of them is near Nigeria, and one of them is in Indonesia. They're fairly close to the equator, and each of them had kind of different countries that teamed together to sponsor and build them. But just by virtue of living near a space elevator, a lot of the predominant cultures in Ostranauts are the people who lived near the elevators and basically sought a better life and work in space. And so K-Leg is a shipbreaking facility that's basically become the shipbreaking facility. If you need a spare part for an out-of-service ship, probably it's going to be there, because that's one of the biggest junkyards. The other sort of major hotspots in the solar system are Mars. There's a very large Chinese colony there. The Jovian system, Jupiter moons, have a lot of lunar or moon colonies. There's New Virginia out by Saturn on Titan. Venus has some aerostats. And then the belt has some as well on some of the larger asteroids. So
So I'm taxiing over to one of these derelicts. So OKLG is where you start when you play the game, and this is the boneyard. These are all the derelicts we were talking about at the top of the stream, and each one is going to be pulling from the loot table of ships and kind of degenerating it, and so it's got some sort of roguelite qualities to it, where there's some random generation and such. You'll also notice I'm using this time dilator a lot to fly. That saves gas because you don't ever lose velocity, so you can just do a couple of RCS blasts and just speed up time as long as you're willing to be patient and with your character, and that's a good way to save fuel.
your power reserve is running low, though, so I wonder if you never turned on your reactor?
I did not turn on my reactor. I was going to see if I could do it just with battery, which was probably a mistake, but I didn't want to go through the embarrassment of trying to turn on that reactor on stream. But I could do it. I can try.
Yep.
I'm getting pretty good at it.
And just for anyone following along on the stream too, I mean, we are in early access at the moment, so we've only modeled out some parts of the solar system. Obviously, as we get deeper into the development cycle, we'll want to put more content around the solar system where you can go and visit all these cool places.
Yeah, there's eventually going to be long-range travel to other planets and moons in the solar system. Not outside the solar system, though. It's not going to be like faster than light travel. And the only thing I think stopping us at this point is we want to make sure the K-Leg region has enough interesting stuff to go on before we start adding another region to fill up with content, and B, the long-range flying is going to mean some
Sorry.
some time dilation controls have to be in there. So.
I'm docking really poorly. I'm trying to dock and I'm just laughing. Sorry. Oh, God.
I'm just going to duck out for a second for a bathroom break. I'll be right back.
Okay. Please don't judge me on
Whoa, what's that?
I like.
So you're docking with one of the derelicts now, are you?
Yeah, I am. I ran into it, I think. Yeah, not good. And now I'm sort of like bouncing off. The view you see here is like the white one is our docking ring on our ship, and the blue one is the docking ring of the derelict that we just powered ourselves up to. And I'm trying to align the rings so that we can dock and go onto that ship. Although it strikes me now I don't have a spacesuit, so.
I'm not getting audio on yours. Is yours like beeping and going nuts over there? I can't hear in-game sounds.
I turned them way down for the stream. I'm sure it
Oh,
is.
okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
I can turn it up here in a second. So we are docked to another ship here, and I could go out there. We can kind of see it. Yeah, I definitely ran into it because look at all that junk on there. But anyway, that's another ship, and I don't have a spacesuit, so I don't really want to go out there. Yeah, do you want to take some final questions from chat, and then we can just close the stream up as soon as Dan gets back? Charis?
I don't. Does anyone have any questions before we finish? We're thinking of doing this semi-regularly as well. I mean, this seems to have gone quite well. It'd be nice if we could do one over a few weeks and then like properly put a ship into the game. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Or just streams based on different things.
Yeah, maybe a stream of the actual beginning of the game is maybe makes a bit more sense for some people, but we wanted to do this to show off some of these new parts and just kind of give you guys a sense of all the systems that go into building a ship.
Yeah. You know what? I'm somewhat disappointed, Corey, that we don't have a cool pattern on the floor with different tiles. We've only got one tile going on. How dare you?
I know. We'll make it look better for when people actually find it. The old Radiant Oddity. If you find it out there, put it in Discord.
Yeah, you'll have to seek it out and see what changes we eventually make to it.
Any parting words, Dan, as I walk into this derelict and choke to death?
Is he back?
I think I heard him sit down. Maybe he's not.
But maybe just because the radiations come up a few times, and I see you've got your helium tank there and your deuterium oxide tank there, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do add the radiation in, we're going to add a few different types. So obviously there's like the electromagnetic radiation, like the sunlight coming from the sun, that we're all kind of familiar with. And I think when we talk about radiation in the real world, that's kind of the radiation we mostly talk about. But then around the Jupiter system, we've got these really strong magnets. So there's all these charged particles streaming through that magnetic belt around Jupiter, and that's kind of another type of radiation. Those kind of charged particles streaming through space. There, it's kind of a bit like solar wind, which is kind of different from the electromagnetic radiation. But right here, what you've got, and we've got the radiation symbol there. So that's actually a fusion reaction that's going to be going on. And anytime we have a fusion reaction, we have neutrons, which are traveling really, really fast, and then we have really high energy electrons traveling around and high energy alpha particles as well. And so this is kind of a third type of radiation. And then, yeah, obviously when we add it into the game, we're going to have different types of shielding for those things. And the DTO there, the deuterium oxide, the heavy water, is really useful for modulating a lot of those types of high energy particle radiations that we're going to add in. So yeah, that's going to be really cool when we get into that really deep tech side there and bring some of that hard science into the game. It's going to be very cool.
Well, we've officially stranded Xavier Savage out in space. My batteries ran out, and I couldn't get the reactor started in time. So, good luck out there, buddy.
Did you bring a flashlight? No, you didn't.
I did not. I'm out in space in what appears to be a light jacket. So.
Oh no.
Dan, do you want to say anything before we close the stream here?
I don't think I have anything specific to add. I'm thrilled that we had a couple dozen viewers come on to watch us build this ship. I think we're going to also try and put a video on demand up on YouTube, so anyone who wasn't able to watch it can watch as well. And judging by how things went today, I think we could do this again.
Sweet. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And if anybody, like, over on socials and stuff, or even just in the chat now, if you have any ideas for stuff you'd like to see from us or things you'd like for us to talk more about, just let us know and we'll see what we can do. Be nice.